Hello, welcome to Royal Black and Elite. We're here for another lecture. Before we begin, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope that your Thanksgiving was beautiful, warm, with family and friends whom you love. And I hope you have a lot to be thankful for. We here at Royal Black and Elite absolutely does as we gear up for our tour. Thanks everybody for your support, for all your likes and sharing. When I say we are growing, the last time we talked, I was on my way to 4,000. 2,000. Now we're on our way to 4,000. So we're growing because our lectures are interesting. As we look at the Royal Black and Elite of yesterday, today, and even tomorrow. But today, I want to talk about a little girl who, at 11 years old, became a millionaire. Her name is Sarah Rector, and often her story is hidden in history. So join me for today's lecture and let's find out all about Sarah Rector. Now, there is some debate about if this is her picture or not, but everywhere I look, they do include this picture as her as a kid and then this as a teenager. But I want to introduce you to Sarah Rector. Now, Sarah also's name is Sarah Rector Campbell because she was married. She was born in an all black city in Oklahoma, and it was in an Indian territory, and the city was called Taft. Her mother's name was Rose McQueen, and her father's name was Joseph Rector. Now, they were grandchildren of the Creek Indians, and they were Black Creek Indians. And his father's name was John Rector, and he was a Creek freedman. John Rector's father, Benjamin McQueen, was enslaved, however, by a man named Riley Grayson. And he was the one who was the Creek Indian. And his mother was also enslaved. And so, because of their enslavement, after the war, Sarah was allotted 159.14 acres of land. And this was a step that they took after a treaty signed in 1866. So she was one of the grandchildren or one of the descendants of her grandfather. And so that's why she got this land. But it couldn't have been that simple because the land that they gave her was completely raggedy. It was it was in a little city called Clinpool, and it was about 60 miles from where they lived. It was terrible. They weren't going to be able to build anything on it. There wasn't even no fish in the swamp. It was a swamp basically. And the family, they weren't poor, but they weren't rich. And so here they had this land, and do you know, 1 year they owed $30 on the land, and her father could not afford it. They were getting ready to lose the land. In fact, he even went to court to try to not even pay the land the $30 off, but he was going to lose it. So what ended up happening, he said, okay, you all don't want to help me out here, then I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lease a portion of her land, of Sarah's land, to the Standard Oil Company. Now, founded in 1882 by John D. Rockefeller, it was the wealthiest oil company in the world, and they leased the land in 1911, February 1911. They didn't hit oil until 2 years later in 1913, when Sarah was only 11 years old. They hit a gusher. The B.B. Jones Company was who was doing the drilling, and they began to yield 2,500 barrels of oil a day. And that was equivalent to around $300 for her, but today it would be around $9,800 a day. They became millionaires overnight. And in fact, they say the Beverly Hillbillies, that show from many, many years ago, was actually built on a depiction of their life. Now, can you believe it? From barely being able to pay $30 to hitting a gusher that kept gushing and kept gushing. And here's some pictures of her family. These are her sisters. This is one of her sisters, Rose, with her daughter. So they did well and were doing very well. And this is where it really gets interesting because just like Wendy Williams, a conservator stepped in and tried to handle her money. You see, because she was a rich black girl and she was underage, the government felt that they needed to have someone come in and have oversight of her money. His name was TJ Porter. And what Mr. Porter advocated for was that she not actually help her parents and her family. No, 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 no. That's not what she should do with her money. Instead, she should let him be over her money. And then that way, when she got of age, that she could have her money available to her. Yeah, right. They would have said she's incapacitated, just like what they're doing allegedly with Wendy Williams. In 1913, the Oklahoma legislature actually tried to have her declared an honorary white, and that would allow her the elevated social standing, such as riding in first class on trains. I mean, the first check she got was for $11,000. That was for a month worth of drilling. That would have been $357,000 today. This woman was a multimillionaire and everybody was trying to get a hold to her money. But this conservator thing got in the news in 1914. You see, the Chicago Defender picked the story up and they just began to run it over and over again because they're like, wait a minute, how are they trying to make this? They thought the girl was white because they were trying to make her an honorary white. And so the people of that time, strong black men of that time, Booker T. Washington and W.E. Du Bois, began to speak on her behalf and write on her behalf. And that's when the NAACP, an agent of the NAACP, stepped in. And he went in and lobbied the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the United States Children's Bureau over this concern because her money was being mismanaged. They performed an investigation because Sarah here wasn't the only one that they were doing. The government was trying to take the money from. This thing has been going on a while with this conservatorship. But it's because of these advocates that she was able to enroll in the Tuskegee Institute. And by the time she was 18, she was already a millionaire anyway. She owned stocks and bonds, boarding houses and businesses, 2,000-acre piece of real estate in the river bottom land. And she was taking care of her family. So after she graduated from college, she actually purchased this house in Kansas City, Missouri on 12th Street. And this is where she and her entire family lived. She also married businessman Kenneth Campbell in 1920, and they had three sons, Kenneth, Leonard, and Clarence. But unfortunately, they got divorced in 1930. So she was remarried in 1934 to a man named William Crawford. That's where her official last name is Crawford. Sarah was released at 21 from her conservatorship and she lived lavishly. They said she loved beautiful clothes, beautiful cars, beautiful houses. And she was around about the same time of another story that we told of Madam C. J. Walker's daughter, Alelia Walker. Click here so you can learn about her love for partying as well. Now, the unfortunate thing also is in the 1920s, even though Sarah was wealthy, they did lose a great deal of their wealth in the 1920s during the Great Depression. And in fact, they lost their home. Unfortunately, she had to sell this home we see here. But now in Kansas, they're picking it up as a historical home and they're trying to do some renovations on it. So we're hoping that does get to turn out where it will be back at least as a historical home. In 2024, there was a rumor a movie that was going to be coming out called Sarah's Oil, and it was shot in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. So those native names are quite hard there. But she died on July 22nd, 1967 of a stroke. And I want to go back to this picture as well. Her nieces came out and said this is not her, but this is. So I wanted to make sure that we give honor to where honors due and recognize a woman who was a millionaire at only 11 years old on some land that they were getting ready to lose behind $30. I firmly believe what is for you is for you. And they weren't going to lose that land because she had a future that was already laid out. And so she lived as a rich woman again in about 1929 and lost some money in the stock market. But on, basically all out throughout her life, she did live as a rich woman. On July 22nd, 1967, she passed away at 65 years old from a stroke in her city of Taft. So that is today's lecture on Sarah Rector. I hope you learned a lot about an 11-year-old who became a millionaire, again, because these stories are so often hidden in our Black history. I want to thank you all for sharing, liking, and subscribing, and especially for the comments down below. I really appreciate you all, and I really hope that your Thanksgiving was wonderful and the rest of your holiday is just absolutely great. And I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Thank you for watching.